So, Police Story, also known as Glass Story, is a 1985 Hong Kong action comedy directed by and starring Jackie Chan. You might remember it as the one where Jackie Chan slides down a lighting fixture in a shopping center and burns all the skin off of his hands and dislocates his pelvis. But we're not going to talk about that aspect of the film, or any of the other exciting stunts. Instead, we're going to talk about all of the different versions this movie has. You see, I have this fondness for movies that exist outside of one main version. A noteworthy example of this phenomenon is George Romero's Dawn of the Dead, which has 3 cuts. Everybody loves Dawn of the Dead. It's got gore in it, and action, and social commentary.
We have spawned our own savagery.
What?
Soon it will consume us all.
I would have made you all coffee and breakfast, but I don't have my pots and pans.
Lots of different filmmakers all the time have said that editing is the most fun part of movie making, because it's the part with the most control. It's how the very shape and feel of a movie is finalized. You see, there's this guy named George Lucas, and he once said something like, "Movies aren't finished, they're abandoned." Well, that's not true because Police Story has like 3 cuts and 4 different English dubs. And Police Story is just one example of this phenomenon. Now, the initial cut of Police Story is the Japanese theatrical version, which runs about an hour and 45 minutes. We open with a sequence unique to this cut that sets a more comedic tone for the film right from the get-go, with more formal introductions to many of the supporting characters in Chan's police precinct. Then we proceed to the briefing on Mr. Chu To, the local heroin kingpin the Hong Kong police force is planning a sting-op on, codenamed Operation Boar Hunt. Next, we move on to the shanty town where Mr. Chu is preparing to conduct a major drug deal. While there are a few more added sequences, scraps of extra footage, and shifted scenes in this version, the biggest difference is the ending of the film, which ends with Chan being arrested along with Selina Fong and Chu's gang, followed by an outtake reel that differs from the other 2 cuts. The Japanese version was later released on tape and laserdisc, and an HD version of a release print eventually surfaced on the 2012 Japanese Blu-ray, which was later ported over to Eureka's recent Blu-ray release. The version of Police Story most people are familiar with is the 99-minute Hong Kong theatrical version. Gone is the longer title sequence and the comedic opening from the extended version, and we cut straight to the briefing on the suspects, which has been both shortened and cleverly intercut with the following sequence at the shantytown. Certainly a far more captivating introduction, and it demonstrates how brevity and refinement in editing can fundamentally change the feeling of a scene. The theatrical version omits Chan's arrest and instead ends on a freeze frame, then followed by its own set of outtakes. The extended and theatrical versions both use a music score by Michael Lai, which centers around a leitmotif, the theme song Hero Story, sung by Chan during the ending credits. There's many variants of this theme, both dramatic and comedic in nature. I'm particularly fond of the renditions that use the Onde Maintenant instrument, which was also featured in the score for Ghostbusters. Finally, there's the international export version, which runs 87 minutes, 13 minutes shorter than the theatrical version. The pacing is quickened, with a longer dramatic scene from the shootout in the shantytown removed, and several extended sequences of comedy deleted. The focus here is on the action. The export version omits Michael Lai's score, and in its place brings composer Kevin Bassensit on board to rescore the movie. I absolutely adore this version of the movie and its music score, which kind of sounds like if Seinfeld was an action movie instead of a sitcom. Hero's story is retained for the end credits, but a different leitmotif takes its place in the actual score. I just can't get enough of this music score, and I wish it had a soundtrack release so bad. The export version also adds an insert of Selena Fong pressing record on the tape recorder. Now that the cuts have been introduced, we can turn our attention to the 4 English dubs this film possesses. The first international English dub of the theatrical version was written by Barry High, who voiced Sergeant Mao in the dubbing itself.
You can't be. Surprised?
This version only saw commercial release on an obscure Dutch VHS and remained fairly elusive until recently, only gaining an official digital release with Eureka's Blu-ray, which in turn was sourced from the exact same Dutch VHS. This dub was then cut down to create the export version, which premiered in English at the New York Film Festival in 1987.
Jackie Chan's Police Force, the film that stole the show at the New York Film Festival.
The film also went under the title Jackie Chan's Police Force, and the title card was changed accordingly. This version saw a release on VHS by Cinema Group in 1988, and the film would continue to be released in the United States under the Police Force title for about a decade. It's worth noting that for the record, a Cantonese version of the export cut does exist and had at least one VHS release in Hong Kong. Clips are featured in a 1989 episode of Son of the Incredibly Strange Film Show made during the production of Miracles. Release history aside, let's talk about the dubbing itself.
I ain't sure about Kevin.
The dubbing cast is very typical for the time it was recorded. John Culkin provides the voice of Jackie Chan's character Chan Kakui, named Kevin Chan in this version.
She's been given police protection. Any more crap from you, I'll arrest you. Right now I'm just a cop, but I might be a movie star someday. I might have to kiss my leading ladies real passionately. What'll she do then? Kill herself? If we didn't fight to make you look good, you won't be sitting on your butt in here! Kevin! Back off! Keep back!
Matthew Oram voices Bill Tung as Inspector Wong.
What'll he do? I guess he'll try everything to stop her from appearing in court. That puts the officer protecting her in danger. While you're on escort duty, there's a hazard allowance. $40 a day. Better than nothing at all. So apply for it. Don't spend it at once.
And Warwick Paul Evans voices Kwok Hom Lam as Superintendent Lee.
Do you realize the time we spent planning that operation? But still you left posts unmanned without my orders, and the prime suspect almost got clean away. Didn't Inspector Wong give you specific orders? I've nothing against Kevin, but I can't have people thinking that if a cop kills someone, he gets away with it. There's no cover-up, it's one law for all.
Maggie Cheung's May character is voiced by Elizabeth Oram.
Of course I'm mad. You insulted me in front of her. You lout. You don't care. Go away. Let me go. No. You're supposed to have dinner with us. Mom hates people who are late. What shall we do? I'm worried about you.
But who really stands out is Simon Broad, who voices a number of characters including Mr. Chung, the conniving lawyer.
You saw one half of the bus. You couldn't see the other half, right?
Yes.
Now, on the side which you couldn't see, would you not agree with me that anything could have happened there? You cops have gone too far this time. Assaulting innocent citizens. Violence in public.
Police Story subtitles haven't changed too much since the theatrical release, and the dubbing script never strays too far from the meanings that are at least conveyed in those. It's a pretty faithful adaptation. I can't say the same for the later dubs, but we'll get to those. Some of the names have been localized. Aside from Kevin, Chuto became Tom Koo, Sergeant Man became Sergeant Mao, Mad Wing became Jackknife, and the Shuttlecock Police Station is referred to only as the Border Police Station in the dialogue. The performances all fare pretty well for a dub of this kind, and none of the voice actors feel miscast. And the export cut is a fun alternative way to enjoy the dub. I can say at this point already that it's hands down the best English version. Next, we have New Line Cinema's dub. I'm gonna say up front that this is my least favorite version of the movie in any capacity. In 1998, New Line Cinema released a redubbed version of the export cut to VHS, Laserdisc, and cable. It also removed Kevin Bassinson's score. My biggest problem with this version is that it has no musical identity. The new score is a generic mishmash of recycled cues from J. Peter Robinson's score for Police Story 4, First Strike, and Rumble in the Bronx, and none of the pieces stand out in the way that Lai and Bassinson's music did. There are essentially no central leitmotifs. Each cue is sloppily inserted in an attempt to match the mood of a scene. New Line also added new sound effects. You'd think there'd be room to improve a mono mix made in the mid-80s, but the replacements only date the film further.
Who's gonna shoot?
Here's what the gunshots sound like in the original mixes of the film.
Huh?
And here's what they sound like in New Line's version. It's just stock digital workflow Hollywood library crap. Disney did the same thing for the initial mix of Castle in the Skies dub, when the original gunshots were just fine. The final battle in the shopping mall has also been fully scored. In the original versions, the music is purposefully pulled back to give greater emphasis on the action happening. This is the climax of the movie, and all you need to hear are the blows and the shattering of glass. There was never any need for music here. Now, I probably sound like a hypocrite, because I hate the lack of music in a lot of scenes in the extended version of Police Story 2, but at least the music that ended up in the unquestionably superior theatrical and export cuts was good. This, on the other hand, doesn't really cut it. The climactic chandelier stunt, which everything in the narrative has led up to. How is it handled in the original versions? Here's Michael Lai's score. Perfectly fitting, right? Now, Bassinson's score. Admittedly, it doesn't have that same wonderful flourish that Lai's score has, but nonetheless it still ends on an exciting and fitting crescendo. Now, New Line's version.
Let's get out of here!
Notice how they didn't pull back the music at all, through all three angles of the stunt. This fantastic stunt is supposed to speak for itself, only the folly is necessary. Now, the dubbing itself in this version isn't terrible, but it's nothing special either. It clings very close to the original dub script, so for comparison's sake, there's not much in the way of interesting dialogue differences. Jackie Chan is dubbed by Ping Wu in this version, and his character is just named Jackie Chan. He's pretty good in the dramatic scenes, but he doesn't channel Jackie's comedic side very well. He just sounds too serious.
Oh, so she's angry. Well, she could have let me explain. Silly girl, dumping the cake on me. I won't talk to her even if she calls to apologize.
I don't think she will.
John Culkin was far better in the comedy scenes and had a more flexible range overall. None of the other performers were very noteworthy to me. They just fared from average to mediocre. Bottom line, it's a pretty forgettable dub, and undoubtedly the worst version of the film to watch, or at least the hardest to enjoy. It's stripped of musical identity, the sound design is botched, and the dubbing is forgettable. Around 2000 or so, Media Asia, or whoever was the rights holder at the time, had a new dub of the theatrical cut commissioned. Its initial digital release seems to be the UK Hong Kong Legends DVD. It's pretty much the same voice cast you'd find in the Millennium Godzilla flick dubs made around the same time. As with those, I assume Rick Thomas's Omni Productions was the actual firm behind it. Jack Murphy voiced as Chan's character, again just named Jackie in this script. It's much looser with dialogue than the original dub, and has most of the cliched writing shared with many of the other dubs of its kind. Stuff like this.
Don't let it go to your head.
You should tell that to Jackie, sir. He thinks he's John Wayne.
And this.
Don't give me that bullshit!
And so on. Andrea Kwan is adequate at best as Selena Fong.
I'll do what I like.
I'm only concerned about your personal safety.
I don't need your concern, thanks. Now get lost.
Craig Allen isn't horrible as Chu Tao, who's this time been named Joe Chu.
You want to make some money? Take a look here. Just let me go and you can have it.
What would he do?
Rick is okay as Uncle Bill.
What would he do? He'd arrange to have her fixed up with a pair of concrete sandals, that's what. Huh. And we can forget about police protection. Who? Instead of worrying about your image, you should be worrying about my missing officer.
He's always the standout, at least in his own dubs.
But that wasn't the plan.
Maybe it wasn't your plan. But you see, we needed this service revolver to kill the rogue cop and to tie up the loose ends.
All of the other performers are pretty lousy, though.
Wild Boar was supposed to be a carefully planned operation. How did it end up like something out of the Keystone Cops? You nearly let the big fish get away.
So it's conceivable that during one of these brief moments, another bus could have overtaken the first one.
It was the only bus on that road.
That is not true.
Hey, the girl you're looking for is shacked up in a big villa. I'm told it's somewhere in Rosary Gardens.
Where was that?
But you better hurry. Otherwise, Chu's gonna have her terminated.
Admittedly, probably because I'm from the only generation that could possibly hold any nostalgic value for these Turn of the Millennium Hong Kong dubs, I can't bring myself to seriously dislike it. I still want to hear for myself the allegedly horrendous Godzilla 2000 dub for the same reasons.
But as long as the beer is cold, who cares?
Now, this caught me off guard. For a long time, I assumed there were only 3 individual English dubs of this movie, but it turns out a 4th one was recorded around or after the time Fortune Star remastered Police Story 1 and 2 for DVD around 2004. Its first commercial release seems to have been the US Dragon Dynasty DVD in 2006. The script is essentially the same as the 2000 dub, though with some peculiarities rightfully rewritten. A lot of the cast is newer talent that can be heard in Godzilla Tokyo SOS and Final Wars dubs. But a lot of the core players like Rick, Murphy, and Kwan are still in there, albeit in different roles.
After all, you've been very valuable to us. There's just one last thing I want you to do.
Huh? And what is that, sir?
I want you to get rid of Detective Sergeant Jackie Chan.
I've nothing against Chan, but I have to show the public that I'm applying the rule of law impartially. I can't afford more screw-ups, George.
Think of me. How do you think I feel right now? You insulted me, and in front of her. Get your hands off me. I'm going.
No, please. You gotta listen to me, Meg.
I don't think the performances are all that great, but they're at least way more energetic in delivery. Here's a scene from the 2000 dub.
Hey! What do you think you're doing? You're gonna kill someone! Where have you been? You were supposed to cover this area. I went to help you. Yeah, and in the meantime, you let them all escape. I was saving your ass!
And now the same scene from the 2006 dub.
Hey! What do you think you're doing? You're gonna kill someone! Where have you been? You were supposed to cover this area! I went to help you! Yeah, and in the meantime, you let them escape! I was saving your ass!
Since this is a surround dub, a remixed sound design rears its ugly head again.
Talk about firepower!
Other than the rare occurrence of a live-action film having more than at most 2 English dubs, I have no real strong feelings about this version. It just kinda exists as an offshoot of an already mediocre redub, with some minor improvements. In conclusion, a movie like Police Story is an example of the longevity of a work of its kind. It's remained popular enough to have all these versions made over several decades, and in its many forms it's still being watched over and over. The more versions a movie has, I think is proof of its popularity and endurance. Movies don't exist as a disposable commodity like they once did. The evolving film and home video industry will continue to milk pre-exhibited films for all they're worth, so long as they still own the copyright.